What's going on, people? Welcome back to another video. My name is Anass. I'm a final, not exactly, I was gonna say a final year medical student, but I feel like it deserves its own video. I am a junior doctor. I've just graduated, but I'm not working at the moment. I'm starting work in a couple of months, so I don't really know what to call myself here, but yeah. But for all intents and purposes, I'm a junior doctor in London. So I made a video about 2 to 3 weeks ago about some of the difficulties and the struggles of studying while in quarantine. You know, I don't think I've ever struggled as much to study as I have now. And I mentioned some of the distractions at home. You know, if you live in a big family and you're trying to study at home, especially if you're used to studying at different places like I am. You know, I'm used to studying in libraries and in cafes and, well, basically those two. But yeah, libraries and cafes, that's where I'm used to. That's my atmosphere, right? But obviously when you're in quarantine, that's not exactly available. So I talked about some of those challenges, but I did the exams and it went fine. So I thought it might be useful to talk about my specific study routine during that kind of exam period, because I was studying in lockdown for about 3 weeks, and how I overcame some of those difficulties of studying in your room all day, every day, yeah? So before we start the video, here's a quick disclaimer, which is that this is the routine that worked for me. You don't have to do it exactly in the same way that I did. Adapt it in whatever way you like and what fits your what fits you, really. And obviously we're like in unprecedented times, so I had to take some unprecedented measures in order to make sure that I'm getting the work done. That's the important thing, right? Getting what you need done. And so that's what I did. So basically this routine is very unorthodox. Yeah, it's unusual, but this is what worked for me. So let's move into the study routine. And obviously the very first thing is you need to wake up. So what time would I wake up? I'd wake up roughly between 1 to 2 p.m. And then obviously I'll get up and do the normal things that normal people do. So I'll get on with my daily responsibilities, which is like cleaning my room, going out to do stuff like going to the post office or buying things or showering, and watching TV series and all of those things. And for me, this is essentially the time period of getting the things that I need to do out of the way during a time period which is quite unproductive for me. So between 2 to 6 is when my house is like really active, like everyone's awake, everyone's doing what they need to do, all my siblings are running around, and it's difficult for me to study around that time period. So you know what, I might as well get the stuff that I need to do done during this time block where I wouldn't have been productive anyway studying. Now, some people have some concerns about the whole kind of, you know, you're messing up your circadian rhythm, right? And yeah, no, that's fair enough. You know, it's nice to have like a regular circadian rhythm. You know, you're waking up early in the morning and then you're sleeping early, and that's probably the more natural approach to take. But as I said, you know, the most important thing for me is that I'm progressing when it comes to my studies, at least, you know, in the 2, 3, 4 weeks leading up to my exams. And then after that, I can go back to fixing my circadian rhythm and those things. And for me, there were only 2 options really. Either I try and study during the day with everything that's going on and it not working for me and I'm not making any progress, I'm not learning anything, or I just take the L on this whole circadian rhythm thing and get work done at night, which actually worked for me. But an important point here is that I would never sleep deprive myself. So I would always get the 7 to 8 hours of sleep, even though they would happen at an unusual time. But because we obviously know that scientific studies have shown that sleep deprivation affects focus and alertness, and that has an evidence base. So I would always kind of sleep until I was no longer tired. Then the next block is where the grind starts, and that's between about 6 p.m. to 12 a.m. and that is quite an intense study block for me. And between 6 to 12 is essentially when we're entering into the night. My house is starting to calm down a bit. From 9 onwards, the house is silent, it's dark outside, and this was particularly helpful for me in order to stay focused. And also there's another thing about it being dark outside. Obviously during the daytime, there's a lot of activity going on everywhere. Everyone's getting to work, there is traffic, there's all of those things. But when it's like pitch black outside through the window, like I'll look through the window and it's pitch black, it's almost like when I'm working, the world has just shrunk. This is what happens in my mind anyway. It's almost like the world has just shrunk, and the only things that exist is like my head and the screen I'm looking at, which is my work. So there's literally nothing going on around me. What it does is like it reduces mental noise for me anyway. So yeah, I'll be like top notch when it comes to focus. The other thing is that obviously as you're entering into the night as well, social media starts to die down, you're getting less notifications on WhatsApp and all of those things. And of course you can take the measures in order to make sure that, you know, you're not checking your phone regularly and you're keeping your phone away from you while you're studying. Not getting any notifications and your Instagram not popping is obviously very, very helpful anyway. It's one of them ones where, you know, I think like when you're checking Instagram at 12 a.m. and you try and refresh the page and it tells you you've already caught up, yeah, that's exactly what you want. No updates to the feed. And during this time, I'd work in chunks of an hour, and every hour I would take roughly a 10 to 15 minute break. So, footnote here. For me, when I'm studying, even though I'm mentioning these times where I'm saying, okay, I'll study an hour, then I'll take like a 15-minute break, then I'll study another hour. It's not the time that's important, because you can sit down and spend a whole lot of time studying, but it might not be the most efficient work you've ever done, right? You can sit down there and make yourself think like you're studying, but you're not actually getting things done. Instead, what I would do is, alongside timing myself, is also set some aims before the session starts. So if I'm saying that, okay, now I'm gonna sit down for an hour, and also the aim of this hour would be to sit down on my screen and finish about 30 to 40 questions on PassMed, then I would not leave the desk until those 30 to 40 questions are finished. I would not check my phone until I finish those questions. And if we've got to an hour and those questions haven't finished, then you know what, we're overrunning the session. Because in terms of priority, amount of work that's been done takes precedence over the amount of time I've been sitting down studying. And here's like an additional side note, which is that maybe every 3 hours I'd go and get myself a cup of tea. Go and make a cup of tea, and not because I need some caffeine, but just because it's nice to just be sitting there and sipping on something. You know, the cup of tea is hot. It is quite nice if you put a decent amount of sugar in. Don't put too much sugar, please, because diabetes is real. But you know, it is nice and cozy. So I like to just sit there and just sip on something. So yeah, I'd have maybe like 3 to 4 cups during my study routine. Then we get to about 12 a.m. and this is where I would take a major break for about an hour and maybe like grab some food, watch some YouTube videos, check what's coming up on my recommended page, maybe something that's comedic, maybe something that's interesting, I don't know, whatever comes up, I'll just watch it for jokes. And we get to about 1 a.m. and then from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. we just repeat that same process that we did between 6 to 12. So just working intensely every hour, taking maybe 10 minutes break. And then we get to 6 a.m. where we're ending the study routine, and this is where I would go to sleep. Now, usually before I sleep, and this is something I've kind of done for years, I like to visualize my overall goals, or if there is something I have the following day, maybe like an interview, maybe an exam, maybe I've got a football match, maybe whatever. I like to just visualize how I want that to pan out. But obviously during exam season, that's not really helpful because every day just kind of looks the same. Instead, what I would do is I would try to sit down for half an hour before going to bed and reflect on how I'm doing. Because one of the worst things for me is staying stagnant, like not seeing any progress. So I'll do everything I can in order to make sure that that's not happening. So I'd ask myself some very pertinent questions. And some of those questions include, how has today been? Have I improved in any way? Has there been any measurable progress? So for example, if I'm doing questions on a question bank and I've done maybe 200 questions, what's my percentage looking today in comparison to the way it was last week? Maybe last week was I getting 65%, this week I'm getting 70%. That means that there is some tangible progress happening. The other thing I ask myself is what went well and what didn't go so well. So the topics that I did today, if I did rheumatology today, how did that go? Did I find it difficult? Did I struggle? Like, how did I feel when I was doing those questions? Was it something that I felt confident with, or did I not feel so confident? If I did multiple topics, then which topics did I feel most confident with? Maybe those are the ones I need to kind of put lower in my priority list and bring up the ones that I find more difficult. Doing this kind of on a day-to-day basis means that every day is providing me some type of value to carry on to the next day. It can be very easy to fall in the trap of sitting down for 3-4 weeks before an exam, and you're doing the same thing over and over again, and nothing is changing. You're not getting any better. You're not progressing towards that goal of essentially being ready by exam day. And that is my routine during lockdown. What are the things I usually say at the end of the video? Follow my Instagram. I'm very active on that. It'll be somewhere here. The other things are, subscribe to the channel, like the video. I've already said comment. That's pretty much it. Holla back at your boy another day, man. Safe.